Hey YouTube friends and family, this is Greg Vasquez coming to you with another YouTube video on the end times. And today we're going to be talking about Nero being the mark of the beast. This channel is on partial preterism, which is the belief, if you're not familiar with it, that the tribulation is in the past, 70 AD, and we still have a future coming of the Lord, a physical coming. And if you're not familiar with that, it's called partial preterism. Preter means past. It's also under different names, covenant theology. People in the early church believed this, people that were reformers, people in the Catholic Church. It's probably one of the oldest, most common, and yet unknown end times scenarios. People also go under the millennial view, amillennialism, which kind of means the same thing with looking at the millennium. But today we're going over Nero. He was known as the mark of the beast, or his image of the beast from Revelation 13. And they became that his image on the coins, like I was showing in the display picture, and on his ensign, which is a military pole that they would carry in Rome with his image, was the image that many believe in the early church wrote about being the mark of the beast. They even denied Christians during the persecution of the Christians. It might have started around 64 AD under Nero, and they denied them the ability to buy food and sell and do things without allegiance to Caesar, without those coins. And Caesar was actually worshipped as a god, so this was anathema. This was really bad for Christians to have something like this that they detested, the image of Caesar, who in those days was worshipped as a god. And these are replicas of coins, and they have other replica coins from the time period you can get. And he was born around Nero around 37 AD and died just in 31 years at 68 AD, while he had sent Vespasian and Titus to sack Jerusalem and destroy Jerusalem. He died right during that period. He became emperor in 54 AD. His mother poisoned his father, who was she was married to Claudius, and Nero Caesar was Claudius's adopted son, and she poisoned the father, and Nero became Caesar. I think she wanted control as much as Nero might have, but he was only 16 and really didn't want to rule for a few years. And he was a very troubled young person, had a lot of things wrong, as many of the Caesars in those days, like Caligula. I believe he was, if you're familiar with Caligula, Nero was worse. He was just disgusting, the things he did. Some of the things I'll mention in this video, just so you know, you might not want children to listen. I'll try to use words that maybe they won't understand, but the things Nero did were disgusting. He was the cause of the temple destruction. Like I was saying, he sent Vespasian and his son Titus. Vespasian started the siege, and then years later, a couple of years later, Titus finished the final siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD. And so in Revelation 13, there are beasts that come out of the sea, and Nero, in this view of partial preterism, is said to be the image of the beast, and that his image on the coins and on the ensign was the mark of the beast, or allegiance to Rome and Caesar, and worshiping him was the mark of the beast. And he did all sorts of bad things. He killed his own mother. He had orgies all the time. He was nuts. One of the worst Caesars. After they figured out what he was like, Rome was trying to get rid of him pretty quick. And when he died, Rome went into civil war. Just like Revelation says, tribulation that is about to come upon the whole world. It started in Jerusalem in 67, right around there, and it went, and then Rome went into civil war and all sorts of nations. So it was in the Roman kingdom, tribulation for all people. And if you look at the word world, actually, tribulation that is about to come upon the whole world, I think that's Revelation 3:10. And if you look at that word oikumene, back then they didn't realize what a world was. They didn't have, their map was square. They thought everything was flat. And they didn't understand the way we know what the world is. We know it's round. We don't understand what gravity is. Back then they didn't. If you look at in the Gospels, when Caesar, that would have been, I guess, Augustus or Claudius, I'm not sure, it might have been Augustus, Claudius, Caesar. And during the time of Jesus, when it says he wanted to do I forget what it's called, not a survey, but he taxed the whole world when he started counting all the people. And they really didn't tax the whole world. What that means is, the oikumene is a Greek word that means Roman kingdom, inhabited area, land. It can even mean something the size of a park. And the trouble with translating some of those words, translators are afraid to do it wrong. And they got a lot of things wrong that they changed, when they translated older scriptures. So oikumene, Caesar didn't tax China. Caesar didn't tax the land that was America. Caesar taxed what says to be the whole world, but really is the Roman kingdom. And you'll find a lot of big translations like NIV changing those words back away from world. The main word used for world is cosmos, not oikumene. And oikumene is often used for land. And something you can research on in your own time, but Caesar was a bad guy in those days. He, like I was saying, he was killing people, his own relatives, mother, children, his own men. He was the second persecutor of the Christians, starting in around 64 AD, I believe, slowly, but it went on and on. The first persecutor, obviously, was the Jews. They had the power of Rome to persecute, and they did with Paul and with others. They went around making the synagogues known that Paul was a bad guy, that all these Christians were bad people, and they would follow Christians as they were evangelizing. The siege on Jerusalem was 3.5 years. We'll get some of these scriptures out of Revelation, and other places read 42 months. When they persecuted Christians, they tortured them quite often, burned alive, crucified. Josephus says at the siege of Jerusalem, and if you want to read about this stuff, it's in Josephus' War of the Jews. You can also read about the culture of the Jews in Alfred Edersheim's book, The Temple, or Life and Times of Jesus the Messiah. And you'll understand things that you're not going to get out of the Bible or from your pastors, unless your pastor's a scholar type. But Nero was such a bad person. He would dress in animal skins, and some of this stuff I'm going to say, you might not want kids in the room. So if you need to pause the video, that would be a good time, and I'll give you a few seconds to pause this. But they crucified people during the 70 AD period. Before that, and it was just horrible. At Nero's palace, they had this place called a pleasure palace. So back during the first parts of the persecutions, in the earlier days of the Christians, Nero would dress in animal skins, and they had people that were on crosses in his palace. He had his own area where he would race these, chariot races, and he would dress in animal skins, and he'd be in a cage, and they would let him out, and he would act like an animal, like a bear, and he'd go up to the people that were going to be burned on crosses. They call a Roman cross, or Roman candle, some people nicknamed later, and they would put poles up into people covered with tar and light them to have dinner parties by. He would come out of dressed like an animal in a cage and chew off body parts, their genitals and stuff like that. The guy was sick. He would sometimes, he was so powerful, he would be there with his men, and he would go and have sex with somebody's wife and come back and talk about it at the dinner table at these parties. They had orgies all the time, and people were forced to, listen to him sing, listen to him do all these things. He was quite a demonic, messed up person. And sorry to say some of these things there, they're pretty lewd. But we'll go into Revelation here in just a moment. Revelation 13 identifies a person who is the image of the beast. He's not the beast himself, even though Caligula and some of the people that were first close to Nero nicknamed him the beast because he was just weird and messed up. And people wrote about it in Rome. We have writings in history in Latin, Greek, old Christians, Irenaeus, other people talked about him as a beast. They talked about him as even the mark of the beast, this what we're talking about today. And in Revelation 13, you'll see at the end, when he says it's a number of a man. The mark of the beast is not many other things that people try to make it seem, but it's the image of one man that Paul was trying to say, and he says, let him have wisdom. Here is wisdom, or here's the mind of wisdom. And we'll go over some of those scriptures. It's real interesting. He's trying to give you a clue, like here's a puzzle for you. It's not used in I don't think, any other writing in the New Testament. Here is wisdom. Here is the mind of wisdom in different parts of Revelation. And he talks about the number of the beast. And in Hebrew, Nero Caesar, it's spelled Nronqsr, Neron Cesar, and they don't have the vowels in the QSR. And each of the Hebrew letters has a number to it. So N is 50, R is 200, O is 650, again for N, Neron, QSR, Neron Cesar, Neron Caesar. And so those add up to 666. This was something common for Jews to do, that they did, and they understand these types of things. They would, I believe it's called possibly gematria, but I'm not sure. That might be a modern thing. And so Paul was giving them these clues and saying, here's wisdom. It's the number of a man. Here it is, We believe also in the early date of Revelation, and you'll understand why as we read some of Revelation, talking about that the person that we're waiting for, this man of lawlessness type figure to come, is alive now. So he talks about in Revelation 17, I believe, which we'll read in a minute, that 5 have fallen, 1 lives, and 1 to come. There were 7 kings, I believe, and we'll have to go read it just to make sure I'm right. But while this was being written, one of the Caesars lived, and everything adds up to Nero Caesar. There's tons of reformers, tons of Catholics. John Calvin believed, in partial preterism. I have another video on that. You can go look at different people in the past. Many Catholic scholars, this is probably the most common view you'll find in the Old Testament. Irenaeus, Eusebius were partial preterists. And this early date means that Revelation was likely written 67 AD, 64, tribulation that is about to come upon all the whole world. We're going to go ahead and start reading in Revelation 13. And this is the famous chapter about the beasts, the sea beast, the land beast, and the mark of the beast at the end of the chapter. And the sea beast comes out of the sea, and it's very similar, identical to the same beasts that Daniel saw in chapter 7. There was a leopard, a lion, and a bear. And then a fourth beast in Daniel that he wasn't quite sure what it was. Here again, he mentions the same beasts coming out of the sea again. Excuse me. And when they came out this time, he also says there was a dragon. So he says he saw the heads. Let's see. We're going to start in Revelation 13:2, and the beast which I saw was like a leopard, feet like a bear, mouth as a lion. They're combined into one. Now, usually the sea represents Gentiles, the land represents religious, like the Jews or Israel. So the feet of a bear and his mouth, the mouth of a lion, and the dragon, which is usually the devil, Satan, gave him power and his seat and great authority. And I saw one of his heads, so this is likely all nations together, and could very well still be Rome, because Rome had many nations. They had Greeks working for them. They had an Arab community in the east. I believe that's called the Byzantine area. They had many nations within Rome. And anyways, they worshipped the dragon and gave power to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him?" Very well could be Rome. And there was given unto him a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given to him to continue 42 months. There's the 3.5 years again that we had possibly talked about, the siege of Jerusalem. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. So this is all in context of persecution. To overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds, tongues, and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And if any man here has an ear, let him hear. He that leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He that kills, let's see, we'll go down actually to verse 11. And another beast coming out of the earth, just one verse later, he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. So this is now the land beast. This usually represents religious systems. So these are not Rome and Israel, but they represent them. Apocalyptic language, if you're not familiar with that, you should study the Old Testament, Ezekiel, Isaiah. Most of them have language that it's very apocalyptic, where they're talking, it's hyperbolic, it's metaphor, if you want to call it that, where they're talking about something and it's a dragon, but it actually represents somebody else. This was actually a common writing style for Jews 200 or 300 years before Christ, and where we get some of the extra biblical books. I think we have one on the book of Ruth. That's I think it's called The Dream of Mordecai, and you can go read that, and it follows along in real time with the book of Ruth, and it's about 2 dragons that are fighting against each other. And in the book of Ruth, it's the good guys and the bad guys, and it represents, and you can get a taste for apocalyptic language that the Jews, this was common to them, and it's in most of the Old Testament prophets. They would weave in and out of apocalyptic language, and it was literal sometimes, and then it was hyperbolic. And so here it helps you understand Revelation, and that they represent things. They're not always literal. And many things that even sound literal sometimes are hyperbolic. And so the second beast comes out of the earth, and exercises all power of the second beast exercises all power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he does great wonders, so that he makes fire come down out of heaven and upon the earth in the sight of men. Now, this is interesting because he says the second beast, the religious beast, goes and submits to the larger beast, of course. And just as Israel was under Rome, they submit and move in the same power that Rome has. So it says they exercise all the power of the first beast. Now, if you read Josephus and Alfred Edersheim, Life and Times of Jesus the Messiah and the Temple, Josephus' War of the Jews, and his writings, you can get summaries of their books. They're very difficult to read, especially Josephus. You'll see what life was like back then. Jews, there were sects of Jews, different eight or so different sects of Jews that fought each other many times. Rome was the bad guy, though, especially. They had idols in the streets. The temple sacrifices were dwindling. The first century Jerusalem was an amazing place, and you won't hear enough about it in the scripture or from your pastors unless they're scholar types. And so it's good to read the apocalyptic language of the Old Testament, and good to get an idea of what life was like in the first century. So Israel was in bed with Rome. When they said, "We have no king but Caesar," they meant it. When they rejected Christ, they were. This wasn't just them saying that they worship Caesar or something like that, but they were, you can't be that close to Rome, who demands your worship. You can't be that close to them and not be crossing the line. There were many things, and Josephus talks about them. And when they, for example, when Paul was sent out to capture Christians and put them in prison, most people wonder, well, how did Jews put people in prison? I mean, they didn't have prisons. They were if someone did something bad, they took them to the Romans. Well, they were in bed with the Romans. They had special papers that Paul took, and he was allowed to go outside of Jerusalem, outside of Rome, different other countries that were just in the Roman kingdom, and arrest people and bring them all the way back and persecute them and even kill. And that is Roman power that the Jews had. So back to verse 12, exercises all power, actually on verse 13, and does great wonders, so that he makes fire come down from heaven and on earth in the sight of men, and deceives them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell in the earth that they should make an image of the beast, which had the wound by the sword and did live. So many of the people that had these coins and the different coins, there's a bunch of them. I have a few. Here's one of Vespasian. This is you can buy these online, and on the backs of these, this is another Vespasian coin. I think I have one of Titus somewhere, and Titus, they have on the backs of these coins images of, I forget what tree it is that was common in Jerusalem, might have been the fig tree, and showing that they conquered Jerusalem, and then they had a slave girl that they had taken captive on the backs of these Roman coins. And Titus, similar, and they had a Nero coin. I forget what's on the back of his. This one's hard to see. But they had these in use. There were other forms of payment in those days because there was trade, but when persecution happened, they did not let Christians buy or sell, just like the scripture says. They they were forbidden, they were persecuted, and they were going hungry and fleeing as far away as they could get, all sorts of things. And this was what the image of the beast was. This is what, when Romans were demanding worship from Christians, and they obeyed what Christ said when the siege of Jerusalem came. They fled before it came, and luckily Vespasian came, and something happened. They had to leave. During that time period, Jerusalem, the Christians in Jerusalem left. They most of them, Josephus says, went to a area called Pella, P-E-L-A or P-E-L-L-A, and but Christians fled away because they knew Jesus' words, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, by the Gentiles. That was part of the sign in Luke, I believe, of the abomination of desolation about to happen upon the whole world. No, upon oikumene, the kingdom, the trial that is about to come upon you, upon the whole inhabited region of the world, civil wars and many bad things. So they had a great image, and he caused all, small and great. He's talking about really Nero here, because Nero is the image of the beast that he spoke, and that's who the beast spoke through, and caused many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So the Romans were going around killing people, and after 64 AD, they imprisoned many. Paul was imprisoned. Peter, I believe, different people during those persecutions, caused all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive the mark on their right hand or in their foreheads. And no man might buy or sell save he that he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Now, some of this is hyperbolic. And then here is one of the first things we're getting at. Here is wisdom. Let him that understands count the number of the beast. So it's a counting game that they're trying to tell you. If you have wisdom, count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Now, why would he tell you to just count if he's just giving you a number? Because Jews knew to break it down into names, and it was probably amongst the Christian Jews, I mean, that this was a hidden thing. They didn't openly say say things about Rome. Paul didn't want to write letters to places where Rome was, because they would kick him out and say, oh, Rome's the bad guy, Nero's the bad guy. He didn't. This was symbolic language. This was John, I mean, but the book of John. So he says, here is wisdom. And again, in another, might be Revelation 17, he uses, let him who has the mind of wisdom. And these are rare phrases. I don't think they appear anywhere else in that way. So he's definitely trying to tell you, pay attention. A first century Jew would understand what he was doing. We're going to go to Revelation 17 now. And this is a short area that we can read also that gives you, this is a little more clue of what's going on. This is when the woman is riding the beast, and it's a different beast, but some of the same symbolic gestures, the same hyperbolic apocalyptic language. And so Revelation 17:7, the angel said unto me, wherefore did you marvel, or why were you perplexed? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. Again, this is a woman and a beast, and she symbolizes one thing and the beast another. And we probably won't go into that, but there's quite a bit of talk in Revelation about Israel and Rome in bed together. and that's just a story for another day. The beast that you saw and is not shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into sin, perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is. And here is the mind that has wisdom. Here it is again. The 7 heads and the 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Now, 7 mountains is real obvious to a first century person, especially in the Roman kingdom. Rome is the city built on 7 hills. So this is symbology talking about Rome. And here's the mind that has 7 heads, 7 mountains on which the woman sits. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short space. Now, the first 7 emperors, let's see if I can name them. Augustus, or Julius Caesar, then Tiberius, Augustus, Claudius. Nah, I'm not doing a good job. Nero was the 6th. I should have written him down. And he was the one that was still alive and one to come. After Nero was a, like I said, civil war. They had a time period called the period of 4 emperors or something, or the year of 4 emperors, where one would become emperor, they'd kill him, another one, and there was like 4 of them that either all died or had to run away. I can't quite remember. And so the one that was emperor after Nero was a very short space. It was a short time, and the civil wars eventually settled down. But Nero was the one that was alive during that time period, and the only one that could have been that have fit the description of what they were talking about throughout the book of Revelation. And then he goes on into the beast and the 10 horns and the kings, and that really doesn't have much to do with what we're talking about today. But I wanted you to see the mind of wisdom he talks about. Again, here's the mind of wisdom, and talks about, this time, it's that same phrase, but he talks about Nero in a different way. He says he's the 6th, or the one that lives now while I'm writing. Very, very likely had to have been the 6th emperor, who was alive from 54 AD all the way to 68 AD. It couldn't have been one of the Caesars during the civil wars, because there was coming and going all sorts of them. And most people, though, try to throw this in the dispensational view. You know, if you're pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib, they throw this way into the future, and a lot of stuff just doesn't make as much good sense. But this was something that the writer wanted you to understand. John the Apostle wrote this, and he wanted you to understand this is wisdom. Here it is. You know, I can't tell you who it is, but you should know. And I think in Thessalonians, he just says, you guys know what it is. I told you, you know, if you go in to read Thessalonians as well, which we're not going to today. One more thing that is going to help if you come from a dispensational background. There's different terms that we were brought up in dispensationalism. I'm a preterist, partial preterist now, or preterist. These terms like Antichrist, man of lawlessness, man of sin, have to be restudied and looked at in context. Some come from Daniel, some come from the New Testament, and they fit Nero. Antichrist is a real popular one that most people understand. When you say Antichrist, they think the beast. And in reality, in Revelation 13, the beast, the image of the beast, or the man who's like a helper of the beast, is the beast's puppet, but not the beast himself. The beast represents a kingdom like Israel or Rome, and the dragon, Satan. But we're going to take a quick look at the Antichrist, because if you continue using the word Antichrist and you're studying these things, you're going to get confused. Because of Antichrist only appears in 1st and 2nd John, and their epistles. They're very small books in the New Testament. They're very short books, and the biblical definition of Antichrist is not a person. It's not the man of lawlessness. It's not the man of sin. It's not Nero. It's not, and you have to study the Antichrist separately. Now, I'll tell you why they connected it to the mark of the beast, or to the beast, or to the end times man of lawlessness. And it's because in 1 John 2:18, little children, it is the last time, and as ye have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now are there many Antichrists, plural, whereby we know that it is the last time. Now, when you translate from the Greek, it does, some passages use the Antichrist or Antichrist. In the Greek, it's just Antichrist. So that's how Greek is. We have to add words sometimes when we understand what's happening. But here it sounds like a person. It might be a person. King James just uses Antichrist, but I think NIV uses the Antichrist. Little children, it is the last time, and as you have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now are there many Antichrists, whereby we knew it's the last time. So what we're going to do, we're going to read this in context. So you're going to get confused with Bible passages if you don't read 5 or 6 verses before a verse and 5 or 6 verses afterwards. And if you read in context, you're going to go, oh, wow, they explain what they're talking about many, many times. There's tons of scriptures like that. And you're not going to be caught up doing what people call cherry picking. Oh, I like this. I'm going to use that for my doctrine and put it over here. And I like that scripture. And we're going to reinterpret this. And you'll see many times scriptures that we use for things are reinterpreted. So we're going to go ahead and keep reading after verse 18 and 19. They went out from us. So he's talking about children. It's the last time. You've heard that Antichrist shall come. Even now there's many Antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time in their day. They went out from us, but they are not part of us. So, He's talking about people. Oh, for the Antichrist, these people that are Antichrists, they would no doubt have continued with us, but they went out, that they might be made manifest that they were not of us. But you have an unction from the Holy One that you know all things. And I've not written to you because you know the truth, but because you do not know the truth, but because you know it. And that no lie is of the truth. What lie? The Antichrist. He's talking about the same context. Then he says, who is the liar but he that denies Jesus is the Christ? He is Antichrist, verse 22, that denies the Father and the Son. Whoever denies the Father and the Son, or whoever denies the Son, the same has not the Father. And he that acknowledges the Son has the Father also. And so all the way from verse 23 back to verse 18, he's saying that Antichrist is not a person coming to kill you. It's not a person coming to stand in the temple. Nothing like that is written in Scripture. Antichrist is a belief system of a person when they don't believe that Christ has come in the flesh, or that Christ is God. And that's what he says here. He denies that Jesus is the Christ or is the Messiah. So all the non-believing Jews, there were believing Jews, Christians, and non-believing Jews, and they were Antichrist. People that don't obey God have the devil working through them, and they persecuted the Christians. And so Antichrist is described here as somebody that does not believe that Jesus is the Christ. It has nothing to do with anything else, nothing written there. Here's the second passage in 1 John 4:3 that talks about Antichrist. There's only 3 areas in the whole Bible. And every spirit that confesses not that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of Antichrist, whereof ye have heard that it should come, and now already is in the world. So here again, John is saying that Antichrist is the spirit of Antichrist that confesses that Jesus Christ did not come in the flesh. Nothing written, you can read these in context, there's nothing about this person being the beast or the man of lawlessness, someone setting themselves up in a temple. There's no link to that. It's just a mistranslation of 1 John 2:18. You've heard that an Antichrist shall come, and people hear that. The Antichrist is going to come. Oh, and they get goosebumps. And all of a sudden, they're connecting the dots with things that don't need to be connected. And they don't keep reading. The Antichrist is just somebody that doesn't, well, Nero didn't, that's the least of Nero's problems, was that he didn't believe Jesus was the Messiah. Yeah, technically he was an Antichrist, but that's not what they're talking about, 1 John 2 talks about a bunch of people that left them, and because they didn't believe Jesus was the Christ. We just read 1 John 4:3, and he says every spirit that confesses not that Jesus has come in the flesh is not of God, and this is the spirit of Antichrist. So that's all it is. And the third and final thing, again, only by John, in 2 John 1:7, he says, many deceivers are entered into the world who confess not that Jesus is come in the flesh. This is a deceiver and the Antichrist, or an Antichrist. So all 3 of these passages, you can study them on your own. This will help you understand that Antichrist is a spirit of unbelief, a spirit of people that don't believe Jesus is Messiah or Christ. And when they don't believe that, they are Antichrist. They are not. It's not a person, and the Scripture never says that. And if you understand this, that's one less thing to cloud your doctrinal study of the end times, the millennium, and stuff like that. And that's all we have for you today. Trying to keep this one a little bit quicker. And God bless you guys. We're going to keep doing videos like this to give you bits and pieces of things that you can put together and go, oh, wow, and get all the puzzle pieces together of this doctrine of the end times and the millennium. God bless you guys. Take care.